When it comes to buying tires, it's usually a pretty big decision because they are so expensive. So everyone wants to know what's the best value for my money, what's the best tire that I can get for my application for the money that I'm spending. Unfortunately, there's really no clear-cut answer on this, but I do have experience with these top 3 tires that people usually gravitate to when it comes to high performance and traction. You may have noticed that I left the Toyo R288Rs off the list. I'm not comparing those tires with these 3 just because I'll get into that at the end. There's a reason why I'm not doing it. It's not because they're not considered a drag radial, it's other reasons besides that. So I've had the Nitto NT555 R2s, the drag radials, on this Cobra I have now, and it currently has the Toyo TQs. I ran the Mickey Thompson Street SS tires on my previous Torch Red Cobra, and this car and the last one, they're really very, very close power-wise. So the difference in power between the two won't dictate which tire is better, because one car made way more power and this tire stuck and the other one didn't. Either it's going to stick with both or it didn't stick with either one is the more accurate scenario. Just to be clear from the beginning as well, these are not based on drag racing times or anything like that. I don't have any 60-foot data on any of these tires, so I'm basing this off just from street performance, what I felt with this car, my power level of over 600, like around 650 wheel. That's what I'm basing the power on, and how these tires have performed in the rain, in warm summer temperatures, and cool, cold mornings. Usually when I go to work early in the spring, early summer, the temperatures are a lot cooler, so the tires don't stick as well, and some of them stuck better than the others in those conditions. Starting out, we'll start with the Nitto NT555 R2s. Those are what I had the most time with on this car before I swapped over to the TQs. And they perform exceptionally well for the most part. I did notice that when I really hammered on the car, they didn't quite stick as good as the other two on this list. So I would put these at third. They are still a very good tire. If you're probably like at around 600, but not really over it by too much, they would probably do pretty well. But in the higher horsepower applications of 650 and more, and probably well above what I'm at, they tend to break loose for a little bit longer than what the other two did. First gear, it did not want to hold much at all. It would spin pretty much through all of first, and second was almost the same exact thing. It didn't really want to hook in second either until I hit third, and then it would start to hook in third. That was my experience with them most of the time, and that was in pavement that was a little bit cooler temperatures, and temperatures that were more on the warmer side where they could have hooked a little bit better, but they didn't compared to the other two. Another caveat I want to mention before getting into the other tires is this all depends on your suspension setup as well. This does have an FTBR bushing kit in it, and depending on what your suspension is, depending on if you have a bushing kit or not, it's all going to affect how well your tires hook. So all of this is subjective to my particular setup. You may have varying results than what I got. You may have better results, you may have worse. So there's that. As far as the Toyo TQs and the Mickey Thompson Street SS, I'll kind of talk about them both in conjunction, because between the two of them, they are phenomenal as far as a street tire. If you're looking for added traction and performance, they hook extremely well in warm, dry pavement and even in the cooler temperatures. I can't exactly recall the traction limitations with the Street SS tires in the cooler mornings, because it was, quite a while ago from when I had my... It's been quite a while since I had the Torch Red Terminator, so my memory of those tires and how they performed specifically in cooler temperatures isn't as fresh in my memory. But with the Toyo TQs, unless it's like sub 50 degrees in the morning, which I have driven those in temperatures below 50, they will spin. The Toyo TQs will spin through first, through second, and grab in third. I believe it was the same with the Mickey Thompson Street SS, but don't quote me on that. As far as the dry traction performance, if it's above 50 and the pavement's fairly warm and it's not too cool of a morning, these things will grab hard in first gear. And I'm talking about the TQs and also with the Mickey Thompson Street SS. They grab really hard. There were times when I expected to spin through first, so I got on it pretty hard expecting it to spin, and it didn't, and it hooked, and it friggin' went. And it threw me back in the seat a lot harder than I was anticipating, which was pretty cool at the time, but you know, I didn't expect it either, so it kind of took me by surprise. So when it comes down to dry weather performance in the summer between the Toyo TQ and the Mickey Thompson Street SS, I would put them as equal. You can't go wrong with either one. In that situation, I would go with whichever one is available, or whichever one is cheaper, or whichever one better fits the wheel size that you're running. I'm running 18 by 11s on this with a 315 Toyo TQ. My Mickey Thompson Street SS tires were on a 10 by 5-inch wheel, and I was running 305s on that. And as far as wet weather performance, it gets said all the time on the internet that you can't drive with drag radials in the rain. It's really, really misguided information, because you can, but it also depends, because I'm coming at this from my perspective of where I live. The roads here are crowned, which means they're not completely flat. They have a little bit of a crown, so water runs off them in real heavy rainstorms. So if you live in an area where the roads are not crowned, the chance of hydroplaning is much higher. Also, I live in the Northeast where it snows in the wintertime, so I'm used to driving in adverse weather conditions. So driving the drag radials in the rain is really no big deal, where other people would probably not do that good because they never drive in anything but 80-degree weather in the middle of Florida. So, you know, there's that aspect to it. But for what I found, if you're driving normal and not getting in the boost at all, keeping the RPMs low, you're really not going to have any issues unless you hit an area where the water is really puddled up quite a bit, and you would hydroplane with probably almost any tire at that point. But in that situation, then yeah, you're probably going to spin out and have issues. I just got caught in the rain with this on the way home from work the other day. It wasn't supposed to rain that day. I do not want to drive this car in the rain, but weatherman said it was a slight chance of rain far south of where my work is in the morning. I left work at 6 p.m. and it was raining, and it was raining far above the area where I work and where I live. So the weather forecast was way off. Nothing I could do about it. I had to drive home, and I had the Toyo TQs on it at the time, and it did fine. You could tell that if you were driving aggressively or something like that, you would definitely have issues, but I did just fine. It really wasn't that bad. Now, the reason why I didn't include the Toyo R288Rs is that, number one, they're not really a drag radial, and number two, I just don't want to lump them in that same category with tires like I already talked about. They're a track-oriented tire. They're not made for straight line performance. They're made for corners and sharp curves and stuff like that. The sidewall on them is very stiff. They are a sticky tire. A lot of people have success with those in higher horsepower applications, but when you start getting it above that 600 range, I had them on my last Terminator with the VMP Gen 3R, and they wouldn't hold. They would just spin everywhere. Maybe it was my suspension setup. Maybe on other cars they hold the traction a lot better. Maybe cars that have traction control, they do a lot better. But for an 0304 Cobra with traction control disabled and horsepower application above 600 at the wheels, they didn't do that good at all in my experience with them. So that's something I wouldn't entertain on putting back on this car again if I wanted to have traction when I really needed it. And so as far as that goes, that's why I really didn't include those in this comparison with the other ones. Now, I mentioned before that I did not have any data on these tires as far as 60 foot times as far as any of them go, but that's something that may be changing soon because I am looking to go to the track. I want to run this down the quarter mile and see what it's getting for a mile per hour to get a real good indication of where my horsepower level is really at. I'm not looking to cut a really awesome time. I just want a mile per hour and kind of see where the car is, you know, realistically in real world conditions. Probably going to have to go on a straight night, which is run on Wednesdays and Friday nights. They don't prep the track that well on those street nights. People run regular street tires on there, so the traction surface is not that good. They're always tearing up all the rubber that was laid down, so it's just not that great. That's kind of why I'm not expecting an awesome time, why I'm going more for a mile per hour. But there is a tested tune on a Saturday that I'm off where I actually don't have something already going on that's planned. So I'm going to try to get down to that. The Wednesday that I have off following the recording of this video is when I want to try to go to the track, but it also depends on weather. If there's any chance of it raining, then I don't want to waste a trip going down to New England Dragway for an hour-and-a-half drive just to have it get rained out and not be able to go. So as long as the weather holds within the next week and a half, I should be able to go to the track and get a time with this car and really see what the real world power output is according to my mile per hour in the quarter mile. So that will do it for the video. Let me know what tires you have had on your Cobra or your Mustang or any car that you have, performance level that you've been able to achieve with them as far as, are they really good traction wise? Are you looking for something better? Are you looking at one of these drag radials that I mentioned in the video? They're all really good. You really can't go wrong with any of them. I believe the Nittos are the cheapest, but you also don't get as good a performance as the other two, but they're all really good tires. You really can't go wrong with any of them. But let me know down in the comments what you think. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to leave it a like. If you're new here, the sub button is down below. But above all else, thanks for watching.